Hello everyone, welcome to the channel. Now, I haven't uploaded on my channel for the past couple of weeks, mainly because I was avoiding the internet because of the new Negan comic that came out, and that's what we're going to talk about in this video. The new Negan comic, Negan Lives. Now, before we start the video, I just want to say that this video does contain spoilers for both the Negan Lives series, well, just the one comic, and the comic series as a whole for The Walking Dead. So, let's begin. Okay, so how did this comic come to be? Well, as we know, last year Robert Kirkman ended The Walking Dead comic series after 193 issues and 16 years. Now, at the end of the issue, in his farewell letter, in Robert Kirkman's farewell letter, he said, P.S. Negan lives. Now, since then, he has hinted at there being more story left to tell for Negan, and now we have a comic. Now, the reason this comic was made was because after the coronavirus put the comic shops in a really bad place, this comic was made to 100%, 100% of the money made from these comics will go to help comic book stores. So it was a really cool thing Robert Kirkman did, and I think he is cool for doing that. Now, I was surprised Charlie Adler came back for this, because Robert Kirkman, I was expecting to eventually come back to The Walking Dead. Now, Charlie Adler, I thought he was done. I thought if they would ever make another Walking Dead comic, Robert Kirkman might, for the hell of it, get like Tony Moore if he could, maybe even get a new artist to take over. I was really surprised Charlie came back, so that was cool that he came back as well. So anyway, now that we've talked about how the comic came to be, now it's time to talk about some of the variants they've done, and then we'll get into the actual story. Now, first things first, this comic has a few variants to talk about. The first one is the regular cover. Then there is a silver foil variant, which was given 2 per store, and a gold foil variant, which was given 1 per store. And if you've seen eBay, you know the gold one especially is very expensive. Now, Robert Kirkman has teased around with a red foil variant. If you've seen his Twitter posts, he has teased it. Now, in my opinion, I think it hasn't been officially released yet. I think this red foil variant is something they're saving for the Comic-Con virtual panels. I know it's something they can release for Comic-Con time. And the next variant I want to talk about is, because of Negan Lives' success, they were doing a second printing because of that. So now it is time for the comic itself. Now, in terms of the timeline of Negan Lives, now, this is the second special to focus around Negan. The first one being Here's Negan, which came out a few years ago. And Here's Negan basically told you his origin story. So in the timeline, it would go Here's Negan, then issue 100, then his last full-on appearance, which is issue 174. Well, Negan Lives takes place between issue 174 and 193, which is his last appearance, where we see a silhouette of him, or him in the shadows, and that is where the story takes place. So, getting into the story itself, now I want to start off with Negan talking to the flowers. Now, there was a bit of fourth wall breaking in this comic, but not enough to the point where it is full on breaking the fourth wall, but enough to where it fits in the world of The Walking Dead, and it is just enough to be funny. Now, as soon as I saw Negan talking, I knew he was talking to the flowers. After reading issue 174 when that first came out, which I'm going to say right now, issue 174 is one of my favorite issues of the comic. Now, when he was talking, the way he was talking reminded me of the beginning of issue 174, where he's kind of taunting the flowers, and it's revealed he's talking to flowers. So I thought they're probably doing that again as a callback to issue 174, and lo and behold, he was talking to the flowers, but in a way kind of talking to the reader, like, you think I was gone? Fuck that, I'm back. Anyway, so I loved that beginning. I thought that was really fun. And we see that Negan has become in a way suicidal. I mean, we see him visit Lucille the Bat's grave, and in a way he wants to die, but he just doesn't have it in him to kill himself, and he's pretty much done with everything. And at this point he is starting to show signs of going crazy. I mean, he's on his own. Makes sense. I mean, look at Princess, she went crazy, and he even says like he'd give anything to start hearing voices, which was pretty funny. So he walks into the house he's staying at, and there's this woman here, and her name is Lucy, and obviously, you know, similar to Lucille. Now, it doesn't really play a role in the story itself, her name, but it is kind of like a little wink to and a nod to Lucille, his deceased wife. Now, Lucy is pretty flirtatious with Negan. We see her and Negan by a fire, you know, a campfire, and they're eating rabbit, and she's like flirting with him, and Negan's just like, you know, cut this bullshit. You're clean. There's no way you're on your own, like. And she's like, you know, you're smarter than you look. And he gets jumped by these two guys named Derek and Barry. Now, it's revealed Lucy is a part of this little small group, and basically what they do is, while Lucy kind of lowers a person's guard, Derek and Barry will come in and kill that person. Now, according to Derek, Lucy usually pleads to let the person live every time, and she even tries pleading for Negan to survive, you know, saying he's actually different, you know, he's a pretty cool guy. And at first, you know, they're like, they want Negan to dig a grave so they don't have to smell his body. So Negan's digging where Lucille is, and while this is happening, Derek's like, you'd rather die than bury up this person. Like, who is this that means so much to you that you would die rather than dig her up? And he's like, you know, it's not a person, it's a bat. And he's like, oh, this I gotta fucking hear. And he talks about his wife, of course. What we saw in here is Negan, and we see that Derek, you know, he's just like, that's the stupidest shit I ever heard. And we see this story actually does get to Lucy. Now, after Derek says this is the stupidest story he ever heard, Barry ends up getting bitten by zombies or walkers that have come into the area, and when Negan uses this as an opportunity to get revenge. Now, he flat out says, look, you should have killed me. People don't kill me when they have the chance. You know, Maggie had the chance in issue 174, and, you know, Derek had the chance, and he didn't take it. And Negan flat out says, that's your fault. So, but before that happens, one of the walkers does bite Derek, and Negan's like, no, fuck that, he's mine. So Negan kills the walker with the shovel, and then he puts the shovel into Derek's chest, which has got to be fucking painful. And he's just there like, I want to like cut you in half with the shovel. Like, it's brutal Negan. And one thing I want to say is I love that Negan, I love a lot of his lines in this comic. I really have missed this character. It was really nice seeing him back. And after he kills Derek, he sees Lucy, who's lying on the grave. You know, she's shocked. She's like, are you going to kill me? And he's like, no, but get out of her grave. And she's like, her? And he's like, yeah, I'm going to get my actual wife and bring her here. She may be nothing but bones by now, but I'm going to bring her back. And so you get to the last page, and he's like, don't you want to see what happens next? You know, he wants her to come with him, but it's also kind of like, again, breaking the fourth wall, going to the readers and saying, don't you want to see more story? And, you know, I'm just like, yes, I want to see more fucking story. I love this comics so much, and there is story left to tell with Negan. Now, in the letter hacks, Robert Kirkman teased that there could definitely be more Negan stories, but maybe don't get your hopes up. But there's always a chance. And he recently did an interview with, I think, the wiki for The Walking Dead, and he talked about how it is nice that there are things left open in the Walking Dead world where he could easily, like if he wanted to, he could come back tomorrow and do a story about Negan burying his wife. He can do a story about Eugene. He can do a story about Michonne. You know, he can do anything. And I mean, it is nice, you know, not constantly having to be on schedule, especially because Robert Kirkman has been working. He has been keeping busy. He works on multiple series. He is also involved with the Invincible animated series, and you know, I do think he did put a lot of time into The Walking Dead, and the fact that he did this was really cool. Now, at the end of the letter hacks, he did a similar message like he did at the end of issue 193, which was the P.S. Negan lives. He said, P.S. Clementine lives. Now, this is where I kind of get into spoilers for the Telltale game, but I'll try to be as vague and as spoiler-free as possible. Now, obviously, Clementine is the protagonist of the Telltale games. Do I think something could be done with Clementine at some point? I mean, out of all the characters to mention, why Clementine? She is popular, yes, but why not like another comic character? Why Clementine specifically? Now, she's in the comic universe, but again, she's never appeared in the comics themselves. Now, I might do a video talking about my thoughts on what they could do with Clementine, and I'll basically leave it at that, as it's a topic for another day, basically. Now, my overall thoughts on Negan Lives was, I wasn't expecting Negan Lives to have explosive moments and huge reveals. I thought this was going to be a simple story that would have given you a bit more closure on Negan, and that's what we got. However, I am surprised we didn't see any other character like Carl. I thought it would have been cool to have a moment where Carl told Negan about Rick's death. I would have liked that. Now, even when I read the final issue of The Walking Dead, the part where we saw Lucille's grave, now I was always wondering, when he buried Lucille there was no tree around, but Lucille's grave in the final issue is by a big tree. Now granted, he could have planted a tree, and a lot of time did pass between his last appearance and the final issue, but I don't think a tree could grow to that big in the span of the comics. Now, I don't know how fast a tree grows. I assume it's different for a lot of different trees, but it's possible. But something Robert Kirkman did point out in the letter hacks was that if you saw Lucille's grave in Negan's last appearance, it was more of just like a couple sticks, while in the last issue it was a full-on tombstone. And now Negan Lives is basically, it gave Negan more of a reason to live at that point, which was his mission was to bury his wife, give her a proper burial. And because of issue 193, it basically confirms he did succeed in that mission. Now, there is a few unanswered questions, like what happened to Lucy. Lucy was with him at the end of Negan Lives, but she doesn't appear in the final issue. So something could have happened to her in that time. Maybe eventually she didn't want to be around Negan anymore and she joined up with the communities. That's very possible. And yeah, but I would like to see why Negan was avoiding Carl in the last issue. I do want to see something like that. And other things I would like to see from if they made Negan Lives into a full-on series is, first, I would like to see this journey, first of all. I would love to see Negan go on a journey to give his wife a proper burial. I think there is tons of stuff that could happen. It sounds like a simple story, but the amount of stuff that could happen in the world of The Walking Dead is great. There's so much potential for so much things to happen, and I would just love to see what comes from it, especially because Negan is such an interesting character and he's such a fun character to read. There's so much you can do. We could also maybe see, like maybe after Rick's death, maybe Carl left the communities for a while. I've had that theory for a while that maybe after the events of issue 192, Carl did leave the communities for a while, and that's why he never became like the leader when he was a grown up. He just moved out to the countryside. Now, it would be nice if maybe he was the one that founded, like he found Negan and told him about Rick, and maybe we saw how like Negan reacted to it. I would personally love a moment between Negan and Carl where after Carl tells Negan about Rick and he tells Negan how he didn't kill Sebastian, he just left Sebastian in the cell, you know, the person that killed Rick. And maybe Negan, there's a big callback to issue 127. Now, if you remember, in issue 127, at the end of that issue, when Carl was talking to Negan in the cell, Negan asks, "Do you still want to kill me?" And Carl says, "Yes, of course I do." I would like if maybe Negan, for some reason, just asks Carl, "Do you still want to kill me?" And Carl just says no. And maybe he just walks off, and maybe we see Negan kind of smile by that, like, you know. I think a moment like that, not many words need to be said, but I think that could be a really nice moment between those two characters, because I've always been interested in the Negan and Carl dynamic. I thought those two characters worked really well off each other. Now, as for other things I would like to see, I would even like to see maybe Negan being involved in the Telltale characters somewhat, because I did make a video back when season 4, the final season, was coming out, and I talked about how I thought Negan was going to appear in the comics, I mean in the Telltale games, because I thought it matched up. You know, he left the comics around the time the final season was announced, and because when Michonne left the comics, they did a Michonne game, I thought, well, Negan left the comics, perfect opportunity to put him in the Telltale games. And he's such a popular character that could get people interested. But they didn't do that, but I still think there is a chance. But other than that, my overall thoughts were, I really love this issue. As I said, I wasn't expecting it to have huge moments. I was expecting a more simple story, and I got what I wanted from this. And I want to see more. Personally, I hope Robert Kirkman eventually does decide to come back to this and do stories of other characters. Now, what one shot would I like to see next? If it's non-Negan focused, I've wanted to see a Jesus backstory for so long, because we know next to nothing about Jesus. I would just love some story on him. Anyway, I hope you guys enjoyed this video, and thank you all for watching, and goodbye.